Good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started here. I am unmuted, I think. Let's go ahead and get rolling. I'd like you guys to meet Jake. Jake, almost 80 years ago to today, it was actually June 6th, 1944. And Jake Larson is a 21-year-old at that time. He's from Minnesota. He joined the Guards when he was 15 years old. And he was on a boat that was packed with 35 other men, all their equipment, and they were destined for Omaha Beach. They were coming in under heavy gunfire, and unexpectedly and early, the ramp on Jake's boat dropped. So before they got to shore, he found himself chin deep in seawater. And the one thought that came to mind was, I need to get to shore. Well, these troops, as they're coming ashore, were greeted with over 1 million mines that the Nazis had planted in anticipation of this attack. And unfortunately, on that day, Jake saw many of his friends perish before they even reached the beach. But after what felt like it must have been an eternity, Jake finally reached shore and he was completely shot. He found a berm and he slumped behind it for safety to get away from the machine gun fire. Hoping to calm his nerves, he reached for his cigarettes and he pulled one from his waterproof pouch. He grabbed his matches out of his front pocket, but realized that he didn't put them in his waterproof pouch and they were completely soaked. But the good news was he saw another soldier lying next to him behind that berm. So he called out to him and asked for a light, but there was no response. He leaned in a little bit closer, thinking the soldier didn't hear him, to get his attention. And he actually noticed that the helmet that was lying above the soldier's body was empty. And shocked to realize that his comrade had passed, he heard the spirit, as he said, of his fallen comrade say to him, "Get up, go, 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 go." So he did. He popped up from behind the berm and he ran as fast as he could to the cliffs where he found safety. He was safe and he had made it. When he was asked afterward how he avoided all the landmines and survived his sprint to safety, Jake said very simply, "I just followed the footsteps in the sand of the men that made it before me." So as you're listening to this, you're thinking you signed up for a real estate webinar, and you're probably wondering what in the heck this story has to do with real estate and passive income. Well, it's actually very simple, because just like in Jake's story, those that have been successful in real estate have actually just followed the footsteps of those that went before them. Real estate is an old business. It has left many clues, and there's a lot of people to copy and follow. And that's exactly what I did. And today I'm going to show you the exact steps that I took to turn a $4 million apartment into a $7 million asset. For those of you that don't know me well, my name is Michael Kramer, and I'm a full-time real estate investor here in Omaha, along with my wife, Lucy, and in our family. We own and manage over 400 rental properties here. But I didn't start in real estate until 2019, which isn't that long ago, just 5 years ago. Previously, I'd been in business for over 25 years. So I'm an experienced business owner. I've built, bought, and sold 7 businesses in that time. But today with Free by Real Estate, I focus solely on helping others earn passive income by investing in real estate right alongside me. Free by Real Estate is really a sort of a culmination of all my business experience. And the focus today is solely to show you how to use real estate as a vehicle to gain what Dan Sullivan, one of my coaches, calls the 4 freedoms. And the 4 freedoms are simply time freedom, freedom of money, freedom of relationships, and freedom of purpose. A lot of times we think freedom and we don't recognize that there's some separation there. Well, my personal passion is to help people like you with the first freedom. And the first freedom is the freedom of time. And the only way you really get freedom of time is if you have, and you're not independently wealthy already, you have to have passive income. Because if you have to trade time for money, that's not time freedom. And I believe it's once you have the time freedom that you can truly live life on your terms and focus on doing the things that matter most to you, instead of feeling trapped by a job or business that you feel like you're slave to. And I believe me, I've been there. It's no fun. I remember running my businesses and how hard it was at times, but it doesn't need to be that way for you. I've helped several people in my own family and my friends experience more time freedom, and I actually hope that I can help some of you guys too. So for today, there's three main things I'd like to get out of our time or have you guys take away from our time here. The first is I want to show you the model, which is I want you to know what value add real estate is and how it works. I want to show you the footsteps. So you're going to see the actual steps that we took on an apartment, a value add deal, and how we brought it what they call full cycle, how we found it, what we paid for it, how we structured the debt, the full breakdown, including the money that we made on it. And then lastly, I want to give you guys an opportunity to act. Towards the end of the webinar, I'm going to show you a list of current deals that we have in our pipeline. And while this is not an offer to invest, it's educational. You're going to learn our model, and you're going to learn these real world and current deals, and I'll show you how to apply our model in these different scenarios, which is obviously important because it's going to prove that there are deals out there that you can make money with, and it's never too late. So if this appeals to you, and we can show you, the next steps to take if you want to invest with us. I realize that some of you guys have busy schedules and you won't be able to stay to the end, and that's cool. And I realize a number of you won't be able to, but you can still see all the numbers and all the terms. I'll drop a link in the chat. And in that, if you click that link, you'll be able to get in touch with our team and talk offline. If you don't want to do that, you're also going to get a follow-up email after this that will include the recording. So if you want to get involved, you'll be able to. And it's important to me that you guys feel taken care of. And this is exactly why I created Free by Real Estate, is to help you, to help my family. So please lean on us. We want to help. Okay. So there's a lot of self-described gurus out there, all with their own get-rich-quick methods, including some that focus on real estate. You've heard about flipping houses, Airbnbs, and a lot of other variations. And you probably also read reports about, what's going on in the housing market. Is there a bubble? Are prices ever going to come down? Is there a coming real estate crash and more? And I'm not here to critique any of that or anybody else's approach. A lot of people make claims with elements of truth in them, and sometimes it can be hard to separate fact from fiction. So I want to help clear up a few things. The first is, I think it's important that you guys know I am not a guru. I'm not offering any kind of a get rich quick model. In fact, what I'm going to share with you today is not something I even created. I didn't invent this. I just copied somebody else. But I am, however, very, very good at building businesses. I'm a practitioner, and I have followed footsteps of those that have gone before me and made it. And now what I'm doing is simply offering my knowledge to you that hopefully will help you understand how real estate can change your life. So right now you're probably asking yourself, why? if it's such a sure model to earn money, why give it away? What's in it for Mike? Well, there's really two reasons. The first is very personal and very heartfelt. It's what I call my why. I don't like, it stems from this idea that I don't like to see people suffer, because I saw my own mother when I was a young man get hurt by lack of planning. And I'll explain more about this in just a little bit. But it's connected to a very personal life experience for me. And it really transformed how I see the world. And it cemented for me that real estate is a tool that, if it's used correctly, it can change your life. And I do believe that. And I believe that is an established fact, that real estate can change your life. For example, I think it's Forbes says that real estate builds more wealth consistently than any other asset class. Of course, I don't want you to be taking my word for it. Do your own research, but I believe real estate has created more wealth than any other industry. So the second reason is much more practical and logical, I guess. And it's just simply because real estate requires money. And if you want to get involved, you got to have capital to do so. And the bigger the project, the more money you need, which is absolutely also a fact. Now there are creative ways to structure deals, and I'm going to show you that a little bit later today. But the reality is, to take down larger deals, we need to team up. In the end, it just means more opportunity for all of us. The way we look at it, and I want to encourage you guys to think about, is we call it an abundance mindset, which is really the opposite of scarcity. It's this idea that there's plenty for all of us, that we're not dividing something small. There's opportunity in abundance everywhere. So I like to think of it as the pie getting bigger instead of dividing up a small pie. That's kind of the difference between abundance and scarcity. And the bottom line for me is that we can't do large deals alone. We need investors and partners. So there's been several pivotal moments for me personally on my journey. The first, as I mentioned on the earlier slide, is a very personal one. It was when my dad died when I was 21. My mom came to me and said that she didn't have $600 to dig his grave. And my dad had been a business owner and a well-respected man in the community, a great dad, um, a mentor, a hero for me, but he died broke. And I knew, and seeing the look on my mom's face, that I had to right this wrong. I didn't know how, because I was young. But if we fast forward to when I was 28, that's when I started my first business. And I had zero business experience. And I ended up buying a franchise because it was a model that I could duplicate. So without really knowing anything about what I was doing, I took the franchise manual. I like to say I swallowed it, meaning it went deep. I didn't question it. I just took it and ran with it. And in my first year, I was the fastest growing franchise. In the second year and the third year, I became the top producing franchise out of 150 locations. And I was very lucky because that manual was very good. And I remember speaking at our national convention about how I did it, how I had become the most successful franchise in just 2 years in front of an audience of about 300 people. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm talking to folks that are doctors, PhDs, MBAs, and some business owners that had been in business longer than I'd even been alive. And I was the one in front of the room. And it was just kind of a surreal moment for me. But I remember after the talk, sort of feeling like a celebrity. Everybody wanted to talk to me. And I don't know if you've heard this phrase, the imposter syndrome. I remember thinking like I'm a nobody from a small town in Nebraska, and all I did was follow the footsteps in the manual. But it was kind of in that moment that I realized that so many times the secret to success is very simple. It's wonderfully simple. And it's just to find a model of success and copy it. Or the way Zig Ziglar says it, who's one of my favorite authors in his past, he says that if you want to be successful, do what successful people do, not complicated. So looking back on that experience, I am extremely grateful for those that guided me. I'm extremely grateful that I didn't have to create anything. I literally read and followed the instructions. And when I got stuck, and I didn't know what to do, I called the creator of the model and I said, "Hey, how do we do this?" The guy that created it had an intention. And if I didn't understand his intention, I could call and ask for advice. It's very simple. Like I said, I just followed the footsteps of those that went before me. The second moment for me was more recent. It was in December of 2021. And we're going to talk about this light bulb moment on this call today. It was when I purchased my first large apartment deal. It was an 88 unit property. And up to this point, I had only purchased small multifamily or single family homes. And if I'm being honest with you guys, I didn't think buying a larger property was possible. It wasn't until I talked to one of my mentors that I realized that I was wrong. He reminded me that over the 4 or 5 years prior to that, that I had built a team. I had built the processes. I had the vendors, and I had everything in place to do it. I had done it hundreds of times on a smaller scale, on smaller deals. And that was really all I needed, that little nudge from Mark. And I'd say reflecting back on that moment, it's now what I call my light bulb moment, where I realized that apartments for me were the next step. If I wanted to continue to grow, it was absolutely necessary for us to go there. So, okay, well, even before we start, I have a favor to ask you guys. There's going to be a lot of good information here. And if at any point during our conversation, you're thinking to yourself, man, I'd like my wife or husband or my business partner or Joe or John or whoever to hear this, I want to ask a favor. If I can please, can I please count on you guys to share this with somebody that comes to mind? This is, like I mentioned earlier, it's all being recorded, and I'm going to send you the replay link that you can share. Or again, if you want to share it with your spouse or business partner, it's important, I think, that those involved understand kind of what you're learning and what resonates with you, and give them an opportunity to hear what we're talking about and see if it resonates with them too. I do want to give the gentlemen on this call that are married a word of caution. If you're not interested in passive income, do not show this to your wife. If she's anything like my wife, Lucy, she's going to bug you to death until you invest in assets that pay you while you're sleeping. Because for so long, my wife was frustrated and struggling too with me working so much. We had a great living, but we just didn't have time together. And so now I blame my wife for all of our vacations, and you guys probably will too. Okay, so let's dig into this deal. I can show you the footprints, and you can see exactly how the actual deal works, how an actual deal works. The photo that you see here is one of the buildings. It doesn't look too bad. Here's a quick summary of the deal. We're value add investors. So what that means is we look for properties that need help. This particular one was 88 units when we bought it. We leveled it up to 90. It was a Class C apartment. It was sourced off market. We financed it through a bank and the seller did a carryback. We did a joint venture with the owner for capital for renovations. This produced a 2.2 equity multiple, so we more than doubled our money. And it has an infinite cash return, which simply means that it's returned all of our capital, and so we have none of our own money left in the deal, and we still have income from it. So I mentioned earlier that this is a team sport, and I would say these are our rock stars. I hesitate to even put my picture on here. I think the person that made these slides may have made a mistake, because I'm simply the guy that serves everyone else. But Alex, he's the guy that helps all of our investors. He's a former Marine, captain, I believe. Got his MBA. As I like to say, he's got a 10-pound brain and does great human being. We've been partners for over 5 years. Next to my wife, Lucy, she's she hate me for saying this, but she's a freak in the sheets, which is Excel spreadsheets for those of you that are wondering what I'm talking about. But she's an Excel whiz and loves finance, loves back office. She's gorgeous, but she's a nerd too. And then the last here on the slide is Ben. He actually married my oldest daughter, so he's my son-in-law, and he is by far the best property manager I've ever seen when it comes to tenant care. This guy goes through walls to get things done, sometimes literally, but he's amazing. So these are kind of the main stakeholders, and everyone else sort of rolls up and reports to these guys. There's actually 12 family members that work in the business. One of the reasons that we set it up this way is because we wanted to have family involved. We want to have a business where there's legacy. We didn't want to, and the reason, guys, is because so many of the assets that we purchase are from asset owners who haven't run these assets like a business, and they're worn out. And so their family doesn't want anything to do with it. And that to me is sad. So I wanted to get my family involved. We have 12 members currently that work in the business, and there's about another 30 or so that are all key to our success. So as you can see, this is definitely a team sport. So the deal overview, on this particular deal, there was no no broker representation, which just means it was off market. We didn't find it listed anywhere. It was never publicly listed for sale. We purchased directly from the seller. The conversation with the seller, our site visits, looking at the financials, it showed us there was an obvious value add opportunity due to mismanagement. The asset wasn't that old, but it just hadn't been taken care of. excuse me, at the time of purchase, the asset was appraised at around $4 million. But because of the challenges with the property and the management, the deferred maintenance and the tenant care, we were able to negotiate a purchase price of around 3 million, which gave us $1 million in equity day one. Now that's on paper, but the good news is that the bank looks at appraisals for financing purposes, so that gave us a huge advantage. And we were able to use a local bank to secure financing, which in 2021 we got a 5-year rate. We locked that for 7 years, and it was amortized over 25 years. We had no prepayment penalty, which is good. It's important, especially on a value add deal. Sometimes they'll lock you in on a rate, and then if there's uh, a desire to refinance or sell the asset before the lock period, sometimes they require a prepayment penalty or yield maintenance. And so it's important that we get the correct financing in place. And again, the seller agreed to carry a portion of this for 24 months. That was really the constraint that we felt, as we had 2 years to get this thing stabilized because of that. So we wanted to pay him back. He did 2 years interest only at 5%. And then we also needed money for rehab. So we had the money for acquisition from the bank and from the seller, but we needed money for rehab, which is normally where we come to investors like you and say, hey, we have an opportunity. We want to level up this property. But instead, being this was our first deal, I wasn't comfortable asking for investor money. So we used our own capital. We had we have a portfolio, as I mentioned. So we secured a line of credit from our existing portfolio using our equity as collateral. That line of credit, I believe, was $1 million. We estimated needing about 810,000. So we asked for $1 million just in case, because every project has a surprise. But this one was pretty much on point, which you'll see here in a bit. The project stabilization process was actually completed in 21 months. We ended up renovating 54 of the units to our interior standard, which we call the HGTV standard. It was an average cost of 14,000 per unit, and we spent right at 800,000, right what we projected. We did decide to refinance this project instead of sell it and keep it in our portfolio. We like the asset, we like the tenants, we like the locations, and we want the long-term appreciation. Since it didn't owe us any money, we decided to keep it. When we did refinance it this year, the rates have gone up significantly. So it was a 7.2% rate, locked again for 7 years, amortized over 25. Again, no prepayment penalty. We're hoping that rates come down. In the event they do, then it gives us the opportunity to refinance without having a prepayment penalty. The stabilized appraisal price now is right at 7 million. And we had a cost basis after renovation of about 3.8 million. A new loan on this of right at 5 million. So if you do the math, we got a loan of 5, we had total cost base of 3.8. The 1.2 million at refi was written to us in the form of a check. So that means we paid off the first bank loan, we paid off the seller carry, and we paid off the line of credit, and we got a $1.2 million tax-free check at closing. So it's an incredible deal from that standpoint. What a huge change and blessing for our family, and amazing. I don't want to miss the opportunity to say how grateful and fortunate we feel. Plus, because we still own it, the property pays us monthly a cash flow of about $10,000 a month, and that's after all debt service. So it's amazing. It's an amazing deal, and we still have remaining equity. It's worth 7. We have a loan of 5, and so we ended up making about 2.5% or 2.5 times on our money from our original line of credit, and we have the ongoing cash, which is an infinite return. And so this is, as a deal overview, this is how real estate can change your life. And this just one deal, looking at this, it's an incredible tool if done right. So let's get into the details a little bit, so you have a little more peek behind the curtain is what we did. The business plan is always the first thing, right? So we're wanting to buy the asset in its current state. We don't ever pay for opportunity, because paying for opportunity is buying based on pro forma. Then we overpay up front and have to do all the work. So we always buy it based on its current financials. And then our business plan is the pro forma, which is how far can we improve the property and what is it going to be worth. So this is kind of an overview of the business plan. Again, we sourced the deal from a direct marketing campaign that was started in 2019. The seller actually responded to a postcard, and we just we had multiple meetings and multiple conversations, and we were finally able to sign the deal in December at 2021. At the time we sent the postcard, he didn't respond with this deal saying he wanted to sell it. We ended up buying another apartment from him in Council Bluffs, a smaller building first, and then this one came up. So it was purchased at about an 8% cap. I mentioned that the renovation budget, was 810,000. That included, we bought it at 88 units. That included turning one of the community rooms into 2 additional income producing apartments. So that's how we got it to 90, is we converted an unused community room into 2 more apartments. We also increased rents across the board between 23 and 30%, which is about $200 to $300 a month per unit. The strategy was to stabilize and hold instead of stabilize and sell. And we'll do normal rent increases as planned, just annual increases. We wanted to do what we call a rolling renovation. So we start with the vacant units. We level up the good tenants as those vacant units become to our standards. So we talk to the good tenants, say, hey, we got a remodeled unit, you want to move into it? If they do, they move in. That frees up more classic units, is what we call them, for us to rehab. And that process keeps continuing until nobody else wants to level up. And then we do rent increases. And those that tolerate the rent increases stay. That's why we didn't rehab all of these units. Those that don't tolerate rent increases move out, and then it gives us the opportunity to level those up and get the rents up. We're not sure on this. We may eventually do a 1031 exchange, but not sure at this point. It's a hold and just seeing what the market does. We did a full inspection of this property. We walked every single unit, came up with a complete plan. The seller was clear he was selling it as is. So anything we found during our walkthroughs, they were not willing to make repairs. Instead, they wanted to offer discounts on the price, which we were okay with because we were able to get that $4 million value and purchased at $3 million. So we felt pretty comfortable with that. We did at the end sort of confirm our renovation budget, solidified our closing plans and what we're going to do. The buildings were built, I think I mentioned earlier, in the early 2000s, with mostly interior updates needed: kitchens, baths, floor, paint, etc. We did want to do some exterior signage, some all new exterior lighting with LED, some concrete work. And a big piece was, as part of Ben's suggestion, was to get somebody on site to do full-time on site to do maintenance, because there was so much deferred maintenance and the tenants were not happy with the previous management, that we wanted to get some goodwill. And so we had some quick wins and we're able to take care of the tenants. We also, because these are not in our backyard, these are in central Nebraska. We're at a little bit of a drive and we didn't have relationships there. So we wanted to build a relationship with the local suppliers and contractors. So we dealt with all local people so that we were able to have goodwill with those folks, and they could tell their friends that, hey, it's not out of town people coming in here to buy these buildings and take our jobs. So the financing summary, because of the $1 million in equity day one, we did not bring any equity to close. So that's a little bit unusual, where normally you're needing to come up with capital out of pocket to purchase. Because we had the equity day one and the seller agreeing to do a carryback, the only thing that we had out of pocket was related to third-party reports, appraisals, title costs, closing costs, etc., which were right around 20 grand. We had, again, the local bank. We again try to stay local. First position, they lent us $1 million. The seller agreed to a second position, which is the position of a lien. In the event of a failure, it determines who gets paid first and second. And then the line of credit, which was secured by our existing portfolio. Now, again, this is where we would normally bring an equity partner in. So if somebody on the call says, hey, I'd like to invest in a deal like this, this is what we would use the money for. But on this deal, because portfolio equity was used instead, we didn't need to bring in investors. And frankly, it was just because I wanted to make sure we had everything dialed in on these larger projects before I asked for somebody else's money. So what did the stabilization look like? You buy, stabilize, and then refi or sell. That's the process. So what did stabilization, if I can say that, there were kind of three things. One was the common area upgrades. Second was taking better care of the tenants. And the third was leveling up the interiors to HGTV standards. This is all very simple stuff. We aren't, creating anything new or magical. It's just assessing what's going on and figuring out what to do. In this case, we had a tight timeline with the turnaround. So we planned 3 weeks per unit, 2 units per person, or two units per 2-person crew. And all crews had to have 2 projects going on at any given time. That would ensure us to get done in 24 months. And we actually were able to get it done in 21 months, so just a little quicker. Again, I mentioned it was mostly kitchen and bath stuff. So here's some kitchens. The kitchen and bath, all granite. All the cabinets are soft close. They're hardwood. They're plywood boxes. The floors are commercial floors with a 20 mil wear layer. We don't do any carpet in our units. The exception would be maybe some stairs if it's a complex install, but generally we don't do any carpet. All new appliances. We paint everything. All the trim and doors are white. The walls are gray. The hardware is all new. Door hardware, bathroom hardware, fixtures, all new electrical fixtures. We make these units nice. So we call it HGTV. Now maybe you guys would want stainless appliances, and that's fine. It's just we don't get the return on those typically when we're doing what in this case would be more affordable housing. But these units are definitely nice. Ones I would live in for sure. So here's the financial outcome. What happened after all of that? Well, the current cap rate, it's unusual that the cap rate comes down, but there's significant demand in these markets where the property is located. And so the cap rate, it's basically the same. We were around 8 before, now it's 7.5. The valuation, the appraisal came in at just shy of 7 million. The net operating income on this deal is 525,000. Now that's before debt service. So it's right at $6,000 a door is the NOI. After debt service, after everything is paid, it's about $111 per unit per month in cash flow that we get. That's free cash flow. That's what would be considered our income after everything's paid. There is a 95% occupancy on these buildings. We have a waiting list. So the only reason we have any vacancy is because we're doing a unit turn or it's in rehab. We have tenants now referring friends and family, which is amazing. I mentioned 54, I think there's that'd be 36 units left to be completed. And that's going to be done as the tenants move out. It'll be paid for out of cash reserves. So and the remaining units, the math on that is those are about $200 a month under what we're getting on the rehab units, on the HGTV units. So what we're going to do is after we get those leveled up to that HGTV standard, we will raise the rents. And based on that, the cost of about 14,000 per unit, that's about a 15% cash on cash return for each unit that we turn. So we get a nice return on our investment every time we turn them, but we're not in a hurry. If there's a good tenant that tolerates the classic unit and is paying close to market rent, we're not going to put the money in until they move out. So what do we learn from all this? There's kind of 3 buckets of learnings. The first is the value of on-site maintenance. This deal, I would say, definitely solidified our theory that on-site maintenance makes sense for our model. Keeping good tenants happy. I think on a larger complex, there's going to be a percentage of those folks that never want to leave. That's their home, and they want to stay, and they're happy to tolerate rent increases as long as they're taken care of. And those are the folks that take the pressure off of us having to renovate more units. So it's less CapEx. They're willing to tolerate the increases as long as we take care of them. So that on-site maintenance is absolutely key to keep the tenants happy. The second is um, just the value of owning our own property management company. So in our experience, if you're using a third party property management company while you're doing a heavy value add project, um, it's going to be much more difficult than if you have your own property management company and you have owners of the project doing the property management because the tenant care during renovation is extra, and the coordination of renovation and the sequencing of renovation and the crews, that's all extra. So you're doing all of that on top of trying to run the operation for those that are not being renovated. And so either third party managers want to charge way more than they normally do, or they just don't have what I would call the long suffering. They don't have the ability to tolerate headaches just because they see more work, not the upside that an owner does. So I think the bottom line for us is that better tenant care, lower costs, fewer delays, and quicker turnaround really are keys when we're doing value add and avoiding the third party property management. Now, if it's a fully stabilized asset and you're not doing any renovation and you're paying retail, then I think third party management is a better fit. But in what we're doing, I don't think it is. So, and I'd say the last one is the value of owning a construction company. So I've been a licensed general contractor since it's been required. I don't know when I had to get licensed, but I've been doing it since 2003. And so I have my license, and to hire a general contractor off the street, as you guys know, is not terribly difficult to do. I think if you could post something on Facebook today and probably have a dozen guys raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm interested in doing the work. However, getting a contractor that has the same interest as the owner is extremely difficult. Contractors, and I am one, so I can say some of these things. We're notorious for overbooking ourselves. We see somebody say they need help, and we say I can be there to help, and we end up taking on more work than we can do, and it leads to project delays. If there's any weather or any material delays, it just all stacks up, and it creates this domino effect, which leads to lost revenue. Then we start getting angry. There's resentment. It boils over, and pretty soon we're trying to fight with each other, which we absolutely hate. We want to have harmony and enjoyment in what we do. It's already hard enough. We don't want to fight with contractors. So the other thing is when we can do it ourselves, we're avoiding all of the markups. So a contractor obviously hires guys or a crew, and the crew gets paid X, and then he marks up their labor so he can make a profit on what they're performing. Plus, they mark up the material. So it's common to see a 10% markup on labor and a 10% markup on material, or they call it overhead profit, I guess. Um, so that's fairly common. So we can avoid the 20% markup. We can avoid the headaches. We can the upcharges if we do all the general contracting work ourselves. So these small advantages, on-site maintenance, in-house management, and in-house construction give us a lot of very small advantages. But man, when they stack up, it results in fatter margins and just better returns for investors. So let's look at some of the deals that we have in our pipeline. We're coming in here for a landing, and then I've got to give you guys a chance to ask questions. This is a list of deals that we're currently working on, and you'll see sort of the deal highlights here. The Hastings deal we just closed on, actually. It's a smaller deal, a 5-unit. We purchased it for $360,000. Had a little equity day one, financed through a bank and a seller carry. You'll notice on some of these, there's a seller carry involved, which is pretty nice. It's what others would call a creative financing. The whole period on this one was 5 years, and the rehab budget was right at 50,000. So our plan there is to nearly double our money on that project in the next 5 years. That one's in Hastings, Nebraska. The other ones here, I'll let you look at and see. You can kind of get a sense of what our hold periods are. Some of these equity multiples are pretty nice. And so this really is, and we've got a pipeline, of other deals that we're working on. I think it's the bottom line is that these are the types of deals that we go after, right? We find deals that need work. We find deals that are I'm going to call in distress, where the managers doesn't care quite as much, or the property's been run down a little bit. And believe me, there's a lot of them out there. They're not simple, to find, and they're not simple to buy because they're complicated, right? And so a retail investor coming in and trying to buy one of these, there's quite a few barriers to entry. But if you do it with a team with the experience, it can be a lot of fun and easy. So, and again, we have a team that's out acquiring these deals, and we're looking for investors to come alongside us to enjoy the same returns, the passive income, and all the time freedom that we do. Only comes from, in my view, um, real estate, investment real estate, I should say, not your personal residence. Okay, so I'm going to open up for questions. I do have some frequently asked questions I want to just address. I get almost every time we do um, a webinar, have a conversation with anybody who may be interested. The first is, what in the heck am I investing in? And I think it's important to know that with us, we are buying assets with an entity, and when you come in as an investor, you actually own a portion of that entity. So you own the entity that owns the asset. So you're an asset owner. You're not investing in stocks. You're not getting a certificate of ownership from as a bond. You're actually owning the underlying LLC. So you're a direct equity owner. What that means to you and why that's important is all the benefits, such as appreciation, depreciation, cash flow, equity, all of those flow directly through to you as an owner on a pro rata basis. So if you own 10% of the deal, you get 10% of those benefits. The next is, what are the tax implications? Well, that kind of it dovetails into what you're investing in, because you're investing alongside pre-buy real estate and you're an equity owner. Everything flows through. So at tax time, each investor receives a K1, and that K1 is going to reflect your share of income or loss or capital gain, dividends, etc. And you can take that to your tax preparer, and they'll consider that when they're doing your taxes. Another common question is, can I invest using retirement or a self-directed IRA? So many folks have money tied up in the market and they feel stuck, right? They feel like, I don't know how the market works. Why is there all this inflation, and why is the market still going up? It's confusing. I'm not in the market. So that I'm probably just confessing to you my concerns. I don't understand how it works, and what drives it. So and Lucy, my wife, we both took our retirement out of the market. We put it in a self-directed IRA and we invested in real estate. So it's very much a common thing to do, and you guys can do that too. There are some limitations. We have another third party that sets us all up, and we're happy to make a referral if that's something that's of interest to you guys. And the last one that's very common is, am I eligible to invest? These deals sound great. I'd like to be a part of it. The short answer is maybe. We are regulated because we are pooling money. We're taking money from multiple people and putting it together and investing it in an asset. It is regulated by the SEC. We're called what's known as a 506C offering. And what that means is we can only accept money from accredited investors. And rather than me explaining what accredited is, because you can be accredited as an entity, you can be accredited as an individual, you can be accredited as a trust. However you wanted to invest, you can be accredited, or you can be accredited with experience. So what I would suggest is to Google, what is an accredited investor, and look for the SEC.gov definition, and look at then your situation, how you think you might invest, and that will give you the details there. So, okay, I'm tired of talking. What questions do you guys have, if any? I'm going to look at the chats. If you guys can put it in, if you want to, oh, you see I just opened the chat up. You can see there's the link to book a call with us if you want to, if you weren't able to stay till the end. There's also, because I just pulled that up on your screen, you'll see this QR code. That's also the same link. So you guys can scan that with your phone. But I'm going to open it up to questions. What questions do you guys have? And if you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that. Anybody want to be brave?
When negotiating the seller carryback, how does that conversation typically go? Because I'm assuming it's coming out of their sales at closing.
Yeah, good question. So seller carries are um, we ask 100% of the time on every deal that we do, whether it's a single family home or a large multifamily apartment. We always ask the question, what is your plan for the money? Because assuming there's equity, we through our discussion we learn what's the debt, what's it worth, and so assuming there's equity, we want to know what their plan for the money is. And if they say, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or I'll think of something, and it's not super clear, then we always ask them if they'd be willing to be a lender on the project. If they believe in our business plan, they can take a portion of their proceeds, turn it into, ordinary income over a period of time, avoid the capital gain on that portion of it, at least temporarily, or it'll be realized over time as a ordinary income, usually. And I'm not a tax guy, so if there's a question about how it's taxed and how it's treated, please ask a CPA that would know better. But typically we ask, and if they're willing, then whatever percentage of the deal they're willing to carry, they make interest on it. And the caveat there generally is they have to be in second position, because if we have a primary lender, then that primary lender is going to require first position. So that's one of the difficulties. The motivation is generally to increase. They don't have a plan for it anyways. They want to increase their return because they get a percentage of whatever we're um, borrowing from them. And so it gives them time to think about what they want to do with it. So those are generally the motivation. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess a follow up I would have is when dealing with local banks, are they a little bit more flexible when using seller carrybacks at closing?
So the way commercial real estate, 5 units or more, is valued is based on what the project produces in income, known as NOI, net operating income. And the NOI drives everything. So if the project has enough net operating income to support all of the debt at the bank, then you have some flexibility there. If the net operating income, because the project is maybe more distressed, doesn't have enough NOI to support all of the purchase price that you'd want to pay at the bank, then a seller carry may be required. But seller carries from the bank are it's all part of their calculation. So they're saying, how much are you borrowing? And then they figure out what the debt service coverage ratio is and make sure that they're comfortable for their portion. And as long as they have plenty of equity in the deal, whether it's through my own money or a seller carry or a combination of, and their position is protected, well protected, generally speaking, the banks are very comfortable to deal with the seller carry involved. They don't see it as a risk because they're in first position. If there's a
Okay,
failure, they're covered.
gotcha.
So if it's worth $1 million, I get a $200,000 seller carry, and I put in 100. I borrow 700 from the bank. The property would have to sell for less than 700 for the bank to get hurt, and the seller carry would go away if the sale doesn't satisfy the bank. The second position would go away. So that's why the bank is always going to want to be in first
Awesome.
in a
Thank you.
in a foreclosure situation. Yeah, which
Okay.
we we have not been foreclosed on. We bought some foreclosure stuff, and that's typically what I see is first position is banks will not. I shouldn't say that. We're going to get really into a rabbit hole. Let's talk offline about that financing if you have questions, because there are ways to get a bank in second position, but
Okay.
it's unusual.
All right. Thank you.
You bet. What else? I did have one come to mind. Somebody else asked on the last, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we did a similar webinar, and it was how does an investor get paid back and the sequencing. And I thought that was a great question that we could probably add to our frequently asked. But basically, when we do a deal like this, it's set up in a sequence. So if somebody puts in equity, they're going to get what's known as a preferred return or a promised return. There's never a guarantee. These could always fail. However, it's known as a preferred return. So what that means is, let's say the preferred return is 10%. As an investor, if you put in $100,000, we're saying that nobody else will get paid anything except the lenders have to be paid, but nobody else will take any profit until your 10% is paid. So a preferred return is always paid first. All of our investors will have a preferred return on any of the deals that we do. You guys are always first. Second, and that can be paid out of a couple of different ways before I go into the second. It can be paid out of cash flow from the project, meaning it's making money every month, or it can be paid out at the time of a liquidity event, such as a refi or a sale. Okay. So let's say over the course of a 5-year period, you're owed 10% per year. It's simple interest. You're owed $50,000 on the 100 that you put in. And over that course, let's say we've paid you 40,000 because there wasn't enough cash flow to pay you 50. So we owe you 10. We have a liquidity event. That event cleans up that 10. And now you're square. Now it's the equity split. What's the asset now worth over and above what we originally put into it, what we bought it for and what we have in it? That equity is typically split 70% to you, the investor, and 30% to me. Your 70% would be paid first. So a preferred return of 10 is paid A1. A2 is your 70%. The 30% is paid to us last. So the only way we get paid on a deal is by making it work. So our interests are truly aligned. We're not taking your money and you know, buying a boat or going on a vacation. We're putting the money into the deal, and if the deal works, we win. So we have to bet on our team. We have to bet on our abilities. I think it's really important that you guys understand that your money's always first ahead of ours. It's the bank, you, then us. So did that raise any other questions, or does that make sense? Cool. Well, I'm going to ask one more time. Any other questions? If not, we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for attending. And if you look again on the screen, um, you guys can see how to get a hold of us. You now know the model, you know our footsteps. And if you're interested in taking the next step, please book a call with us. We'd be honored to help you invest alongside us and earn the passive income and get that time freedom so you can live life on your terms instead of feeling like you're trapped in that job uh, or being slave to your business, right? You don't have the time freedom. Maybe you're crushing it, but you don't have the time freedom. So we'd love to help you get that if we can. So thank you, everybody. God bless you.
Thank you.